All right, hey everybody, and welcome back to the John Talks podcast. And this is going to be part 4 of our Down to Business series. And I'm going to call this one Money Talk, because in this one we're going to talk about a subject that a lot of people tend to be nervous about in the business development and sales process, and that is talking about deals, closing deals, and all that good stuff. So let's start from the top. Let's start with the sales process itself. So for me, it's all about relationship and understanding what the other party needs in the relationship. It's just like dating. It's you have to know the preferences of the person that you're working with and what they're going for and all that good stuff. So you have to start with great questions. And I've prepared a list of questions that I ask during the sales process, and hopefully that's helpful to you. So number 1, I'll say things like this. Tell me a little bit about your project. And I'll just be quiet and I'll listen to what they say. And I can't emphasize this enough, but asking questions and then just being still and listening really well and having a posture, if you're meeting via a video call or you're in person, what I'm doing right now, where you lean forward and you're engaged with what they're saying, that's really important because it shows them that you're plugged into them and you're taking time to really process what they're saying. And that's important in building trust in a relationship and showing that you hear them and that what they have to say is important to you. So the next thing that I'll ask is, what's driving this? Why are we having this discussion? So for example, I talked to a client that's in the logistics business the other day. And they approached me, and they've been around for a long time, and they're established, they have a good reputation, they have a good client base, but they wanted to start marketing and advertising to a new segment within their industry to build out not an entirely new client base for them, but one they really haven't pursued aggressively in the past. And the reason why they went after this new client base is because as a logistics and storage business, they have a limited amount of capacity within their warehouse, and some clients, some industry types are going to be more profitable than others because they just want to store their stuff there, and after whatever it is that they're storing is in the warehouse and secure and all that good stuff, it doesn't really need to be checked up on that often. It just needs to be in a really safe environment. And they tend to need their service a lot more. So it was important for me to understand why this client that's been around for a long time suddenly wanted to start marketing to a new segment, and to make sure that it was something reasonable and something that I could help with. The next question that I ask is, what sort of outcome would you like to see at the end of this project? And so here I'm really asking what their expectations are from me in the process. If they come back and they say, for example, that whatever they pay me, they want to see 100 times that in returns. Well, that's not entirely reasonable. If I could generate 100 times the return on investment, I'd be the richest man on earth, because that's an incredible return on investment. So quite often what I'm looking for is something that falls within the reasonable margin of what I've been able to achieve in the past. And that just helps me to make sure that I know that I can deliver on whatever it is that they expect of me. The next thing that I ask is, how often would you like for me to check in with you? So communication, my mom always used to say, communication is the most important thing in a relationship. And that is absolutely true. And I'm sorry to say it, but in the past, if we have lost a client at Aquavita, it's not because our service isn't good or because they don't like our personality. It's because the communication was not there in the way that the client wanted for it to be there. So that could be frequency. It could be the channels that they would prefer to communicate through. For example, and this is a question that I have further on down the line, but I didn't realize early on how important it was to establish whether a person wanted to be contacted via phone call, text, email, etc. So some clients never want to talk on the phone. They just want to communicate via email. They prefer the written word. They prefer bullet lists. They prefer updates that they can read and process on their own time. Other clients are more personal, and so they want, rather than reading an email, they'd rather never look at their email. They'd rather get a phone call and have that live interaction with you. So it's really important to establish how often they would like for you to communicate and which channel they would like for you to use to communicate with them. Another thing that you can ask that's very, very valuable is do you have any questions for me? So after I ask the client or the prospect what's driving the project, and I ask them to tell me about the project and collect outcomes from them and so on, I open up the floor to them to just ask anything that they want to ask of me. And usually this involves them asking credibility questions. How long have I been doing this? Have I done projects that are similar to this in the past? Do I have any recommendations for them that they might not have thought of? And part of it is they're doing their due diligence and they're investigating all their options. And another part, I think, is that they're just, kind of gently testing me to make sure that I can answer their questions on the fly. And it gives them the opportunity to kind of test my mettle and make sure that I can make sure that I really know what I'm talking about by asking questions and seeing how quickly I can answer and with how much detail that I can answer. So that's a great one. I'm just saying, do you have any questions for me? And when should I follow up with you? So after that discovery call in our sales process, that's what we call the first call. When they've contacted us and they've requested that we do a consultation with them, that's called our discovery call. After that, the next step is typically that we will go deeper on project details or outlining or talking to multiple stakeholders or something like that. But I always want to make sure, and I say this to my team members, make sure that the chain remains unbroken. And what that means is you always set up a follow-up time. If you just do a call with a prospect or a lead and you say all of these other questions, oh, thank you very much and have a great day, click, and you hang up, well, when are you supposed to follow up with them? Are they going to follow up with you or are you following up with them? And typically if the person says to me, well, I'll follow up with you, what I say is, okay, great. And if I don't hear from you by next week on Wednesday, when would you like for me to follow up with you? And what that does is, I think sometimes people underestimate how busy they are and how many things will happen. And so I'm building in a safeguard to make sure that if life happens and they get distracted or they have a big opportunity that comes their way, that the project that they wanted to work on with me just doesn't get lost in the shuffle. And that's a very professional thing to ask. Now, if the client is saying, I'll get back with you, well, maybe it means that there's something that happened in the discovery call that's kind of turned them off to your product or service, and that's fine too. If they say, no, you don't need to contact me, don't worry about it, I'll contact you, typically I take that as a red flag that they're probably not going to contact me back. That's just not going to happen, and that's okay. It's okay to walk away and thank them for their time and the opportunity and for reaching out and move on. So, subtext. It's not only what they say, it's how they say it. So it's really important when they're talking that you listen to their tone. If you are in person or on a video conference call, it's important to watch their expression, especially when you start to talk about price, timeline, what's important to them. It's important to watch their body language. Are they leaning back? Are they leaning forward? Are they smiling? Are they scowling? Do they have no facial expression? When you talk price, do they look shocked or pleased or thoughtful? In their tone, are they polite in their expectations and how they define project deliverables? Are they rational? Are they reasonable? Are they rude or curt when they speak with you? If they're rude or curt when they're talking to you in the discovery meeting, that's probably not going to change throughout the project. And some people have said things along the lines of, they may just be having a bad day. Well, my mom used to say that when you bump a tea kettle, you find out what's inside of it. So they're going to have other bad days. And if you're talking to somebody who's rude or disrespectful to you, it doesn't really matter what the reason is. You can expect that they'll do that again in the future. So even if you're really hurting for revenue, I would really ask yourself the question, is it worth it to work with somebody that's going to speak to me in this way? And if they do, you don't respond in kind. Always be polite and professional and courteous with them. But I would move on to the next. And, if they're respectful and they are differential to you as a professional within your industry. For example, I had a couple of calls this week with some great prospects, and they said things like, hey, we really respect your opinion and what you do, so you tell us, what do you think would be best? So I respect that, because if I were to hire them to do something for me, I'm hiring them because I respect their expertise and their skills. And so I would treat them with respect, and I would really want their opinion on things and for them to point out things that I may have missed. So you want for people to treat you in the same way, right? So always make sure that when you're doing your due diligence, you're listening to that subtext, and that there's a professional respect between the two of you, that they have reasonable and rational reasons for doing the project, and their expectations are reasonable and rational as well. And just make sure that it's a solid relationship. Just like if you were dating somebody, you would want to respect the other person that you're dating, because you're about to go into a long-term commitment with them. You're giving them a piece of your life. So next up, all right, you've done the discovery meeting. You've asked some great questions. Hopefully those were some good thought provokers for you to get started. Now you're getting to the point where you're talking about money. So when I started in the sales process, I forget who it was that I learned this from, but it's great advice. And they said, even if you're about to call somebody and they can't see you, smile before you call them. When you smile, it affects your voice and it affects your mood. Even if you've had a rough day, if you smile, it does something to your mood. I can't explain it. I'm not a psychologist, but I know that it has a very real effect on your tone, on your delivery, and how you're received. So when you get to the point where you're talking about money, just make sure that you relax and hopefully smile. It doesn't have to be like a ear-to-ear grin, but just relax and have a natural smile on your face. And speak with directness and confidence. A lot of people, especially when you're first getting started in business development or sales, there's a reservedness, a shyness when you're talking about that kind of stuff, because money can be a really touchy subject for a lot of people. But people will mirror back what you're doing in that conversation. So if you are nervous, they're going to be nervous. If you're shy talking about it, they're going to be shy giving you direct answers. So speaking with directness and confidence makes them comfortable with doing the same. So now you need to be prepared for pushback. So you may give your minimum price that you're willing to do for the project, and hopefully that's built on fair market value and all that good stuff. And they may come back and be aghast. They may not have expected that, or maybe they just want to haggle or get a great deal, or maybe they're just a super budget oriented person, and it's in their nature to always go for the cheapest thing. So you just need to be prepared for that. And I had a martial arts instructor that once told me that if you're going to go into a fight, you need to expect to be hit, and it's just going to happen. And if you expect it and you're prepared for it and you're relaxed, it's a lot easier to take those hits and just kind of roll with the punches. So just be prepared for that. And when it does happen, don't let your demeanor break. Just keep that confident, relaxed air and negotiate through it. And you want to be upfront and very transparent and unapologetic about your prices. Have a tall posture. So I think a lot of people that are just learning their product or service, or maybe they have a great amount of respect for the person that's sitting across the table, and so they really care about their opinion. There's this tendency to be like, it's this much, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. And if it's too much, maybe I can change. And don't do that. Just state it in a very matter-of-fact way. Don't try to hide anything about your pricing. Put it all out in front and just trust the process. And if there are any hiccups, if you're sitting across the table from somebody that's polite, reasonable, rational, professional, that respects you, and vice versa, you can negotiate through just about anything if there are any bumps in the road. So next up is make it easy for them to buy. So what that means is you need to do your homework and think deeply about what you charge and why you charge it. And you want to make sure that it's easy for them to understand your pricing and your payment structure and how long things will take. And what you offer is priced at a fair market value. So always make sure that if you want continued business, you want to give people a great price, because if people feel like they're getting great value for the money, they're going to tell other people, they're going to come back for more, and that's a good investment in your future. Now, if you don't know what to say, if they pose a question or they have a reaction that's kind of set you back on your heels for a little bit, be silent. while you formulate a response. It is okay to take your time. It's better to appear slow and deliberate than fast and foolish. Dr. Charles Stanley, who was the minister that baptized me when I was a little kid, he said that he was invited to be interviewed on a couple of large news stations years and years ago, and he knew that they were going to put the screws to him and ask him some difficult questions. And so to remind himself to pause, he put a little placard on, he basically wrote on paper and put a little paper tint in front of him that just said, "Pause." And anytime they asked him something and he just needed to collect himself for a second, he looked at that, he took a deep breath, formulated a response, and then delivered it in a classy and courteous and professional way. So it is 100% to take your time before answering a question. It makes you look more collected and as if you're less easily flustered, and that's a good thing. It makes you look more dependable. Also, it's okay to walk away from a deal that's unfair to you or them. The world is abundant. There are other opportunities out there. Sometimes it feels like, oh man, if I don't land this deal, I'll be in deep trouble. But I promise you, and I used to think that way myself, but I promise you there will be other opportunities. And if you just commit yourself to having professional dignity and pride in what you do, and give yourself permission to walk away from a deal that's unfavorable for whatever reason. Let's say that it doesn't match your values, or they can't pay you what you're worth, or whatever. It's okay to walk away. Now, when you do that, you want to make sure to be as courteous and professional as possible. So if they can't afford your services, but you know of somebody that may be just getting started, or there's an alternative, and maybe the quality isn't quite what you would offer them, but it would serve them for the time being, offer that solution to them. Say, hey, thank you so much for this opportunity. I really appreciate your time. Here are a few resources that I would suggest to you that'll be a better fit for your project. And I really think that what you're doing is great, but we're just not a great fit for you. And only say that what they're doing is great if that's honest, right? So if it's something that you feel is immoral or would cause you to compromise your values, just say, thank you so much for your time and for thinking of us and reaching out to us. This isn't a great fit for us. So I wish you all the best and good luck with your next person, or something along those lines. So be kind always. Now, when you're presenting your pricing, be silent afterwards and give them time to think about the costs you've presented and respond. Dave Ramsey once said, it's called a pregnant pause for a reason. A sale is about to be born. So even if they're silent for 10 seconds, 30 seconds, a minute, once you've made your pitch and they've asked for pricing, you've given them your pricing, give them time to mull it over. Don't pressure them. That looks pushy. It looks desperate. Let them think about the deal that you've offered, think about their needs, and then give you a response when they're ready. And be kind always. If you're not a great fit for each other, wish them the best of luck. As I said, if you can offer them other resources or another vendor or an alternative product or service, do so. Integrity is sexy. All right, so you've asked your questions, you've presented your pricing. Now, how do you close the deal? So when you're to the deal closing stage, if you've listened well and presented your pricing and the rapport with them is still strong, it's time to put a bow on the deal. So asking closing questions is a great way to transition from the discovery part of the meeting to the execution part of the process. So here are a few of the closing questions that I often ask. What do you need from me in order to move forward with this project? So that gives them the opportunity to say, well, okay, we need you to present to two of the other stakeholders, or they may just say, I need everything that you just said in writing, in an email, or they might ask for a contract. If they ask for something like that, another closing question is, where should I send the contract? Or where should I send the invoice? If they say, let's get started, send me the invoice. Well, you need to know which individual at their organization is responsible for receiving that stuff. So that's an undervalued question. Oftentimes, I'll close a deal or earlier in my career anyway. I've learned this lesson. So I would close a deal and they'd just say, send me the invoice. And so I'd send them the invoice. And, weeks, a month and a half passes. I still haven't received first payment on the project, and we're already well on our way in the project. And I would follow up, and it turns out that after investigating, the person that I sent the invoice to that was responsible for selecting a vendor was not the person that cuts the checks or does the billing or the treasurer or whatever. And that's really the person that I needed to send the invoice to. So that's a really important question, is who do I need to send billing information or invoices to? And if it is a different person, making sure that you have the contact information for that person. Next question would be, when are you available to do our project kickoff meeting? So here at Aquavita, if we go through the sales process and we close the deal and I send them the contract and send them the invoice, I want to introduce them to my team. I want to start gathering content for the marketing campaign that we're going to do for them. All of that needs to happen in a kickoff meeting. So in that closing meeting, I want to make sure, as I said earlier, make sure the chain remains unbroken. So if we have approval to move forward with the deal, I want to set the next meeting. And in that project kickoff meeting, I'm going to set the next meeting date, and so on and so forth. And then finally, I ask, do you have any other questions or comments for me? And again, that just gives them the opportunity to ask any other questions that they hadn't thought of initially, and leave nothing unsaid, leave nothing undone, so that you truly are putting a bow on the deal and you're ready to go. So in closing, always be polite, professional, and respectful of their time and their money. Thank them for the opportunity, regardless of whether or not you close. Always thank them for the opportunity. It's, gratitude opens up many doors in your life and in your heart. And get moving. If you close the deal, make sure that you move fast. You never know what might be gaining on you. Okay, everybody, that wraps our Down to Business podcast series. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this was valuable to you. If you have any questions, I would love to hear from you. I would love your comments. You're always welcome to go to our website at aquavitacreative.com and fill out that contact form. And I do see those messages, and I would love to hear from you there. I'm also on LinkedIn as Jonathan Cox. You can DM me there if you have any questions or any feedback on this. And if this was valuable to you and you think it'd be useful to a friend or a fellow business owner, family member that's starting their own endeavor, please share the podcast with them. Leave a comment on our podcast. We are on Apple, iTunes, and iHeartRadio. And leaving comments and following our podcast helps to get the word out to more people. So we really appreciate that. And again, thank you so much for listening. And I look forward to our next series together. Have a great day, and go out there and get it.